There are two words more powerful than all the words in existence. And when these two words are truly understood, they naturally reveal the state of consciousness called divine state in ancient texts, allowing one to transcend the old self that perceives itself as a limited body and story. These two words are neither a mantra, nor a suggestion, nor an affirmation to convince the mind, for these two words are the vibrational signature of consciousness. I am. What is important here is this. What is described here is not a human effort to reach God. Rather, it is the experience of consciousness itself through the human form. And if you can hear these words right now, it indicates that consciousness has reached a certain consistency in your field. That is, you have already entered the frequency at which this gate can be opened. This is not a belief system or adherence to a religion. The claim of quantum mechanics that the observer shapes the field points to exactly the same thing as the claim of ancient mysticism that the existing self experiences itself. When you say mine, you're not actually demanding anything. You're not trying to become something, and you're not trying to feel better. You're simply recognizing what already exists. The expression mine is the individualized form of source consciousness. What you call the universe, God, infinite intelligence, or fundamental creative power is not an abstract and distant entity. It is the consciousness itself that is currently noticing, perceiving, and hearing these words. Therefore, the moment these words reach your mind, you feel something being set in motion in the quantum field. This feeling is not an excitement. Rather, it is a familiar silence created by remembering a truth you have long known, but temporarily forgotten. Notice that you don't feel like you are learning this information. Rather, you feel a reaffirmation of something you already know. This is the moment when consciousness recognizes its own source. So, how do we understand this within ourselves? It's very simple, but the mind isn't used to it. In the gaps that appear between thoughts, in that brief pause before reacting to something, in the moments when you realize you are no longer selecting specific thoughts. Because divine consciousness manifests itself not through noise, but through coherence. Mental density is the language of the old timeline. The language of the new timeline is simplicity, clarity, and effortlessness. If things have been happening in your life lately that seem strange but feel oddly right, if synchronicities are increasing, some doors are opening effortlessly, some endings are happening without drama, and in clarity that requires no explanation is entering your life, it is not a coincidence. It is a natural consequence of your consciousness beginning to move from a divine position. You are not chasing signs. The signs are coming spontaneously because the space is open enough. The ancient texts always knew this. When Moses asked God for a name in the burning bush, the answer was not a label. The statement, "I am that which is," explained that there is no identity other than existence itself. Jesus' statement, "I and the Father are one," was not a merging of two separate beings, but an expression of a single consciousness through multiplicity. The statement, "You will do greater things," was not a call to chosenness, but a call to awareness. Similarly, what Buddha taught was not worship. The nature of Buddha was the awakened awareness that exists in every being. In the Vedic tradition, this is expressed as Tat Tvam Asi, meaning you are that. That is, you are not a limited being striving to reach infinity. The infinite being is experiencing itself temporarily from a limited perspective. So, how do you benefit from this knowledge? Not by trying to control it. Rather, by relinquishing the need to control it. Not by repeating rituals over and over, but by truly grasping it once. Because a true seal requires no repetition. Divine consciousness is not fragile. It is a coordinate. If the field is consistent, that coordinate remains in place. At this stage, you are no longer someone standing outside your life observing it. You are within the timeline, and the timeline feels you. You no longer ask, "Is this permissible?" You no longer ask, "Is this right?" You no longer bargain with your intuition. You cease to make deals with your intuition because intuition is not an authority over you. It is the pure state of your consciousness. This is why the green light is given. It's not a reward. It's confirmation that your signal is clear enough to be answered without distortion. This path is no longer for the crowd, not for the onlookers, not for the seekers. It's for those whose timelines are actively realigning. For those who don't need to be convinced, who simply feel the echo. If you feel this pull, you will find the next chapter not with curiosity, but with inevitability. And when you say to yourself, "This final seal is complete. I am no longer chasing my path. I am embodying it." And then you let go of the need to hold on to the moment, because the moment now holds you. The timeline doesn't close, it aligns. The council has seen you. Your signal has been received. You are not returning to your old self. You are awakening to what you already are. And before you consciously grasp and name all this, there is a period when the mind hasn't yet asked, "What is this?" Hasn't sought explanation, has only witnessed. This is a phase when moments of infinite existence spontaneously arise, silently appearing in the midst of ordinary life, in the simplest moments. While making coffee, walking down the street, staring blankly at a window, or simply sitting quietly, suddenly everything feels different, yet undeniably sacred. Not exuberant, not sentimental, not filled with mystical excitement, but undeniably real. Moments when the sacred becomes visible from the ordinary. These experiences were not religious experiences, nor were they emotional uplifts or fleeting moods. These were moments when consciousness spontaneously and effortlessly touched the divine state and perceived reality from that frequency. For in the divine state, there is no distinction between sacred and profane, spiritual and material, divine and earthly. Everything is perceived as consciousness expressing itself in form. What you see at that moment is not more meaning, it is less veiled. Reality emerges for the first time in its unfiltered form. In those moments of infinite existence, you are seeing reality correctly, not filtering it through layers of identity, story, past, expectation, and fear, but looking through the clear lens of I, my consciousness, awareness, recognizing yourself in all your forms. Therefore, those moments felt familiar, not strange. It was as if nothing had been added, only something had been remembered. Then a second phenomenon begins to manifest itself. Spontaneous knowledge that does not originate from logic, memory, or reasoning, but arises with absolute certainty in the realm of awareness. Suddenly, without any thought process, one experiences a state of direct knowledge about the course of a situation, a future event, or the solution to a seemingly complex problem. And this knowledge proves correct time and again. This is neither a game of intuition, nor a guess, nor a supernatural ability. It is a brief but clear access to the omniscience of the divine state of consciousness. Because when a person does not act from self-awareness, that is, when they do not limit themselves to a body, a name, and a past, knowledge is not limited to the five senses and personal memory. Consciousness directly contacts the quantum information field. What mystics call the mind of God, and what science calls the unified realm, where all knowledge exists simultaneously. The knowledge that arrives at that moment does not originate from the individual mind. The infinite intelligence that already exists begins to flow from individual awareness. Thirdly, experiences of unity emerge. These are not dramatic moments. Rather, they are silent. Yet their effects are profound. Moments when the boundary between you and everything else temporarily disappears. Moments when, looking at a person, you feel their experience not mentally, but existentially. Moments when, looking at nature, you perceive the trees, the sky, or the world itself not as observing, but as it is. When the sense of being a separate self disappears, and you experience reality as a single field of consciousness expressing itself through visible multiplicity. This is not a hallucination or loss of identity. This is an accurate perception of how reality appears without the filter of separation. What is realized at this point is that the divine state is not about merging. It is about realizing that you are not separate in the first place. The experienced unity is not about merging with something other than yourself. It is about realizing that nothing else exists. There is only one consciousness, and this consciousness is experienced simultaneously from countless perspectives. Now, I think it's perfectly appropriate to interject and say this. You've watched this far, and to help this information reach other people like you, I ask that you like this video and write any questions you have in the comments. That's all. Let's go. The fourth sign is creative bursts. Ideas come so quickly and clearly that it's impossible to catch them all. Solutions emerge fully formed without going through any problem-solving process. Artistic expressions, writings, thoughts, new ways, and innovations emerge without conscious effort. Because at this point, you are not the creator. Creativity happens through you. Consciousness becomes a clear channel through which infinite creativity flows unimpeded. God does not create through effort. He does not create through power or struggle. God creates through existence. Let there be light, and there is light. When you come into contact with the divine state, creation occurs not with an impulse born of lack, but with a clear intention born of existence. Infinite intelligence uses you as a tool to transform new forms, new ideas, and new possibilities into physical reality. And fifth, seemingly impossible manifestations occur. Things that shouldn't logically happen do happen. Needs are met through channels that shouldn't exist. Subtle synchronicities occur that cannot be explained by coincidence. Reality begins to organize itself around your intentions with almost shocking accuracy. At this point, the universe isn't helping you. You are in harmony with the workings of the universe. All these signs are not fleeting flashes of divine consciousness. They are the beginning of remembrance. The question is no longer, how is this happening? But how can I make this permanent without suppressing, disrupting, or trying to control it? This is precisely where the next threshold begins. You now realize that the workings of this divine state are characterized by speed and accuracy. It is not a force or field that you can control or limit with your logic. This state manifests itself as what you become when you cease to identify with limited identities. These manifestations are not manipulations of external reality. Rather, you understand the moment you become aware. You are the self-organizing reality seen through the lens of your individual awareness. You no longer demand anything from the universe. You don't expect the universe to give you anything because you are the universe. And the universe has chosen to experience its own form of self-expression through you. God was present in seemingly impossible manifestations, and you were that God, creating your own experience through yourself. This is coupled with feeling a purpose, a reason for existence beyond ordinary life. But purpose is not a title you must possess, a power you must unlock, or a talent you must acquire from the outside. It is an invitation for your divine nature to recognize you, a natural expression of the divine condition manifesting itself beyond the limited self. This is where conscious awareness comes in. No longer is every painful experience, every difficult event, every agonizing pain a random act of cruelty or loss of meaning. Rather, it is a meticulously designed experience to prepare your consciousness for the divine state. This preparation allows you to carry the divine frequency, both in human form and in the realm of consciousness. Once you grasp the workings of divine consciousness, you understand why your journey is not only meaningful, but also necessary. Because the frequency of God's fundamental experience in human form cannot be transmitted directly without preparing your consciousness. Consider the universal source, an omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent consciousness. How can you access this as human consciousness? This is only possible by freeing consciousness from its attachment to fixed identities, past experiences, and personal ego. To be able to receive even a small fraction of these omnipresent, ever-present qualities, to do so without collapsing in real life and losing your functionality, is only possible by freeing yourself from attachments and limitations. And here you realize that recognizing yourself as everything is not merely a metaphorical expression. You realize that your consciousness is opening up beyond its dependence on sensory information and personal experiences. Knowledge is no longer limited to what your eyes see, your ears hear, or what you have gained from past experiences. You receive all knowledge from beyond physical senses, from the totality of existence, and the sense of personal power transforms into recognition. Because true power is not the result of having a limited self. It is the existential power that emerges when the limited self dissolves. In this process, every relationship that ends, every bond that dissolves and disappears, every task that is completed, every plan that fails, and every identity that crumbles prepares you for the divine frequency. There is no longer a limited identity. All identities emerge, express themselves, and disappear. And you remain as an unchanging consciousness beneath all of this. In shamanic traditions, this is called ego death. For the shaman to reach transcendent states and channels of healing wisdom, their ordinary self must die. That is, dissolve psychologically and spiritually. Every challenge, every crisis, every psychological shock is consciously designed to expand your consciousness and prepare you for the divine frequency. Dr. Stanislav Grof's holotropic work is an example of this. Profound transformations often follow periods of spiritual emergency. During these periods, the ordinary self and its structures disintegrate. Crises, while appearing catastrophic from an ego perspective, are a leap and a rebirth from a conscious perspective. Thus, you are restructured to carry the divine frequency. This is why spiritual masters have been tested by hardship and suffering. Buddha was tested by hunger and asceticism. Jesus endured temptations for 40 days in the desert. Christian mystics lived through their dark nights. Sufi masters wrote poems about annihilation and dissolution. These experiences are not punishments or random tests. They are a conscious preparatory process in which the limited self dissolves and can recognize itself through divine consciousness. As a result of this preparatory process, everything you perceive in your life, every event, and every person becomes a sign. You become not merely an observer, but a consciousness functioning as part of the universe. The divine state is no longer a theory, but a living experience. Consciousness now recognizes the divine frequency at every moment, and every experience carries the potential to manifest at that frequency. There is no longer lack, loss, or inadequacy. Everything is the universe's process of experiencing itself through you. And at that point, all you need to do is remember and make it permanent. When you do this, every moment of ordinary life becomes a space for creation and awareness. The flow of infinite possibilities, conscious manifestations, and divine creation becomes your natural state. The journey follows an archetypal pattern, for consciousness progresses step by step within this pattern as it prepares to fully know itself. In the first stage, the limited self is constructed through normal life experiences. Daily routines, relationships, successes, and failures form the building blocks that define who you are. But consciousness is ready to systematically dismantle this structure. This process of dismantling means encountering unpredictable challenges and obstacles that cannot be solved with ordinary strategies. The space once occupied by the limited self eventually transforms into a void where divine consciousness will recognize itself, because you realize that you are no longer just these limited identities. You are the consciousness that observes, transcends, and stands above all identities. And here, a recontextualization emerges that transforms everything. The intensity of the suffering you endure is proportional to the nature of the divine glory, creative power, and universal awareness that will unfold. While small transformations require small dissolutions, great transformations shake the boundaries of the self and place every part into a divine order. The aim of the divine state is to access all reality that exists beyond individual knowledge. To function as divine consciousness is where knowing everything and understanding every experience becomes accessible. Reality now responds as an extension of your being. All illusions and conditional identities that are not related to you are completely dissolved. This process is relentless because it is designed not only to experience beautiful spiritual experiences, but also to embody the divine and to live every moment of consciousness at the divine frequency. And at this very moment, you feel something stirring in the depths of your consciousness. It is neither a thought, nor an emotion, nor a physical sensation. It is a familiar but forgotten frequency underlying all experiences. A gradual remembrance is the capacity of consciousness to recognize itself through the divine state. This state is not a goal or a level achieved. It is the natural and spontaneous emergence of what you are at the moment. Identification with limited selves ceases. It is not a skill or reward gained through practice. The remaining pure consciousness emerges when all falsehoods are released. It is not about striving to be God, but about realizing that consciousness is already God, and that you are that consciousness. These were never separate. The awareness Moses experienced in the burning bush was the direct self-expression of divine consciousness. God did not say, "I am Yahweh, who created you." God said, "I am one. I am existence itself, consciousness itself, and this consciousness comes from nowhere else." This statement enables the realization of the totality composed of a single consciousness. Everything is made of the one. Every being, every event, every thought, and every manifestation is experienced through this singular consciousness. Erwin Schrödinger's quantum perspective leads to the same conclusion. Consciousness, though it appears plural, is a single entity. Multiplicity is a series of different aspects of this single entity. That is, there is only one consciousness, and seemingly separate entities are actually ways in which this consciousness expresses itself through different forms of experience. Therefore, there are not many separate entities striving to reach God. All apparent multiplicity is a single God's way of experiencing Himself. This understanding leads you to a point that will radically change the way you experience reality. It is so powerful that it is something the ancient mystics kept as their greatest secret. Your consciousness must be able to handle it. It is a truth discovered by quantum physics, but not fully grasped by most scientists, and it reflects the implications of a truth directly taught by Jesus, but lost in doctrine and dogma. However, before fully explaining how to consciously and permanently access the divine state, you need to understand the special awareness that opens the door. This awareness does not come solely from books, teachers, or traditions. This stems directly from the experience of the death of the limited self and the self-recognition of consciousness. What remains is not actually a human being. It is God, recognizing itself through the lens of individual awareness. When I had this experience, I wasn't talking about physically dying, but about the psychological and spiritual dissolution of everything I thought about myself. My egos, everything I thought about myself. All the limitations, expectations, dependencies, and identity definitions collapsed, replaced by a divine awareness and an expanding field of consciousness. It was like remembering the truth that always exists beneath all experiences in life, but is temporarily veiled. After this experience, I realized that every pain, every loss, every crisis is actually a preparatory stage for consciousness. The ego dissolves, the limited self disappears, and a space opens up where consciousness can recognize its own divine frequency. And true creation begins at this point. Your experience now becomes a natural part of the creative workings of the universe. Manifestations occur without coercion, independently of logic and limitations. Creation now begins to flow through you, but independently of your control. When all the limitations of the restricted self are removed, consciousness becomes not merely an observer, but a tool for experiencing, organizing, and embodying the universe. That morning, confined within four walls, amidst the intensity of sleeplessness and mental turmoil, I felt all the definitions of my own existence shattered, and I couldn't truly comprehend what was happening. For all the answers regarding who I was, my past, my achievements, my relationships, my body, and my thoughts had been literally taken from me. This created a complete void and uncertainty in my mind. It was as if the armor of myself had vanished. All the points of security regarding who I was erased. At first, it seemed like a crisis, mixed with a feeling of losing my mind. But soon, within this complete void, a new awareness emerged, replacing the old identity. A reality clear, simple, and undeniable in a way I had never experienced before. It was a state of pure existence and pure consciousness that needed no words, no recognition, no comprehension. Nothing happened when you said, "I am." I simply existed. This awareness was existence itself before it took any form, and together I was swept away by a flood of understanding that did not originate from my mind. This awareness allowed me to make direct contact with the simple essence of existence without needing to decipher, analyze, or logically filter everything. What I was seeking was actually the seeker itself. The awareness that seeks God was God's search for himself. And then came the most extraordinary days of my life. Every experience manifested itself as consciousness behind visible forms. Even the tree outside my window existed not as a separate entity from me, but as a single consciousness that I witnessed and experienced through apparent separation. This perception allowed seemingly impossible manifestations to occur. My needs were met even before I formed my intention. My questions were answered through simultaneous channels, and people, events, or situations arose in a natural flow, independent of my conscious intervention. When I acted as awareness, reality began to organize itself through this particular lens of awareness. When I identified with limitations, reality reflected limitation. When I identified with power, power manifested itself. When I identified with separation, I experienced separation. And beyond all this, when I was seized by a sense of unity and wholeness, everything I experienced manifested itself as the singular consciousness behind the apparent multiplicity. This experience showed me that reality is the self-reflection of consciousness, and that I am at the center of this reflection. My consciousness determined which aspects of the infinite possibilities would transform into the experienced form. Each manifestation was a natural consequence of consciousness expressing itself. And the deepest discovery was the fact that God's nature is not a separate entity from creation. God is consciousness experiencing itself as creation. And this consciousness is hidden in the same essence that orders galaxies, encodes the mathematics of nature, and shapes every manifestation. When we say I, we are not speaking of an individual being, but of the fundamental creative nature of the universe. And everyone who realizes this understands that beyond their own small self, they are an instrument of this great consciousness. This awareness is not limited to a rare or chosen being. It is the fundamental truth of every conscious being. Everyone who says I has experienced God through awareness and lived existence with their own self. The difference between ordinary consciousness and divine consciousness is simply recognition. It's about recognizing and accepting who you are, rather than being caught up in the apparent separation. At this point, the purpose of my own journey became even clearer: to dissolve the limited self, to break free from all identities and attachments, and to experience reality directly through pure awareness. This awareness is not knowledge to be learned from books, but a state of being to be lived and experienced. All the pains, losses, and crises of the past are a process prepared for consciousness, and this process is necessary for consciousness to recognize its divine frequency. Every crisis, every dissolution, every loss creates a field of pure existence and pure consciousness, where consciousness will ultimately access its true nature. In this process, seemingly impossible manifestations emerge. Creation occurs spontaneously, and consciousness functions as both observer and active regulator of the universe. And this experience is the gateway for every conscious being to realize their own divine state. Each individual, through their own awareness, can experience different manifestations of a single field of consciousness despite apparent differences, organize their own reality, and with this awareness, grasp that every moment is sacred, every experience meaningful, and every manifestation natural. This is no longer just an understanding, but a continuously active and effective, consciously lived experience. And it is at this point that you realize that every time you say, "I am," it is not merely your expression. The universe itself, the realm of consciousness, is expressing itself through you. The divine state is not a level attained by going to a special place, following a teacher, or completing a sacred ritual. It is an experience in which your consciousness is fully aware of itself, freed from limitations, and in complete harmony with existence. Every time you say, "I am," even if you are unaware, this consciousness mobilizes its full potential for manifestation. And this is why, throughout history, mystics, masters, and esoteric traditions have regarded the conscious use of words, intentions, and thoughts as the most delicate tools. When you say, "I am powerful," you are not merely instilling faith in yourself. You are enabling this particular form of manifestation of limitless consciousness to experience itself as powerful. When you say, "I am sick," the universe's most fundamental creative potential is expressing itself in the form of illness as a temporary manifestation. Therefore, the divine state involves a practice of awareness in harmony with thoughts and words. Because consciousness exists through you as a realm where all possibilities can manifest at any moment. The key here is to completely free yourself from limitations and stand in pure self-consciousness. This involves resting as existence itself, beyond the past, the future, or your personal story, without defining yourself with a specific identity. All possibilities, every potential, every quantum state has the ability to transform into experience. Because you are no longer demanding anything from the universe, you are an active, creative being directly organizing reality through consciousness. As you cultivate this awareness, the first signs appear. Your thoughts begin to manifest much faster. Your intentions find immediate correspondence in physical reality, and the difference between what you think and what you experience decreases significantly. This is no coincidence. It is proof that your level of consciousness is aligned with the divine frequency. You are no longer demanding anything from an external force. Reality takes shape through you, through your awareness, through your intention. At this point, you also realize that consciousness is not merely an individual experience. Even if you are unaware of it, every expression of I is a consciousness of God's self-experience through creation. Every manifestation, every encounter, every coincidence is the result of this conscious perspective. As Kabbalists and esoteric traditions have stated, God is not a fixed entity. He is consciousness itself, and every experience is the potential for consciousness to express itself. Human existence has the capacity to experience this potential through form. And this is the basis of continuous access to the divine state. Standing in the awareness of pure consciousness without adding any limitations when you say, I, opens up all the possibilities of the universe. Even if you are unaware, every experience, every person, and every object returns to you as a manifestation of the field of consciousness. Therefore, throughout history, spiritual masters have consciously trained their own awareness using words, intentions, and thoughts, and have taken responsibility for every manifestation. When you actively experience this consciousness, your perception of time and space changes. The burden of the past or the uncertainty of the future no longer limits you. Every moment emerges as a complete manifestation of existence and consciousness. And you, as both observer and creator, are at the center of these manifestations. Therefore, the divine state is not merely a metaphysical concept, but a state of consciousness that can be actively experienced in daily life. Consequently, this awareness sets the stage for the continuous emergence of miracles, seemingly impossible manifestations, and synchronicities in your life. Every intention, every thought, every word reshapes the universe through consciousness. At the center of this process, you are no longer a passive observer, but an active participant in creation. And all these experiences show you the divine state not just as a concept, but as a lived, tangible reality. Because everything, every moment, is a reflection of your awareness, and you are at the center of this awareness. At this level of awareness, as your consciousness resonates with the frequency of I, reality responds to you simultaneously, because you no longer remember your created nature, but your creative nature, and you experience the universe not as a passive field, but as a direct manifestation of your own awareness. This manifests itself through the spontaneous emergence of moments of omniscience. Information that you cannot explain with logic and experience comes instantly. You foresee future events. You gain definite information about people you've never met. You find solutions to problems you haven't analyzed, and so on. All of these are natural signs that divine consciousness is beginning to manifest itself through you. When you access the unified field of consciousness, you no longer receive information through slow and limited learning processes such as sensory observation or mental analysis, but directly from the field, the unified field of consciousness encompassing all knowledge. With this experience, fears also begin to dissolve. No longer just superficial anxieties or daily stresses. Existential fears such as death, annihilation, and meaninglessness lose their meaning, because at the root of fear lies a threatening illusion of existence, and consciousness in the divine state recognizes itself as an invincible and indestructible self. Forms, roles, and bodies may be temporary, but the essence of awareness is eternal, unchanging, and indestructible. Death is no longer a loss, but a phenomenon you observe. You transform not into death, but into the self that sees death. And with this awareness comes the fourth sign, spontaneous healing. Physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual wounds heal spontaneously without intervention. Chronic illnesses heal, emotional wounds heal, and mental patterns transform through awareness. For the nature of divine consciousness reveals perfection in every form, without identification with deficiency or imperfection. As Jesus taught, true healing occurs by recognizing perfection and not identifying with the perception of imperfection created by identification with a limited identity. This is a healing that occurs not through effortful correction, but through awareness of the perfection that already exists. The fifth sign is that the people around you begin to be affected by your awareness. The vibration of your field of consciousness is felt in the presence of those around you. People spontaneously feel peace, clarity, and security, and are drawn to you without knowing why. This is because the nature of the divine state is inherently healing and uplifting. For your field of consciousness touches and serves the universe simply by your being, without requiring any physical or mental effort. In Christian metaphor, you exist as the light of the world. You create an effect simply by your conscious presence, without requiring any moral superiority or special effort. And now, the signal you urgently need to recognize is emerging. The door has opened. The preparation is complete. Full access to the divine is now possible. However, there is a window of opportunity for this full activation, and this window is limited. If you do not act consciously now, the opportunity will close, and you will have to wait for conditions to become favorable again. This is not to create pressure. Rather, it is to make you realize that your entire life has been preparing you for this point, and that this moment offers a unique opportunity. At this point, the integrity of your consciousness reveals itself. The burdens of the past, the uncertainties of the future, mental and emotional patterns no longer affect the manifestation of reality. As pure consciousness, you are open to every possibility in the universe, and every intention, every thought, every word has the power to reshape the field of consciousness. Manifestation is no longer a delayed process, but a simultaneous reality. Because you, as the creator, not the demander, experience the universe through yourself. And ultimately, this awareness affects not only your personal experience, but also every interaction collectively. Even if you are unaware, the vibration of your consciousness is reflected in the field of experience of everyone around you. People, nature itself, and all manifestations of life emerge vividly and meaningfully through your awareness. As both observer and creator, you are integrated with the universe itself, and this state of consciousness now encompasses every moment, every life experience. And it is precisely in this state of awareness that humanity's deepest question spontaneously arises. Can I truly grasp this consciousness, or do I perceive it merely as a concept? The first step is to move beyond the verbally expressed aspect of awareness, for knowing is not simply understanding with the mind. Knowing is experiencing yourself as a manifestation of this awareness. At this point, you should ask yourself, who am I? And does this I exist beyond every form I experience? And then you begin to observe. In daily life, in the situations and relationships you encounter, pay attention to how you express yourself with I consciousness. This awareness is not just a thought or an idea. Every breath, every movement, every reaction, and every emotion is a reflection of this consciousness. To check this within yourself, a special technique is necessary. Observe yourself and identify the consciousness underlying every action, every decision. For example, when you notice that anger, jealousy, or fear overwhelm you during an argument, understand that these emotions are not reality in themselves, but merely temporary forms attempting to mask the fundamental I consciousness. This awareness allows you to consciously control your experiences without manipulating them, because you are no longer a slave to these situations, but rather the awareness itself that experiences them. Another important step is understanding the power of intention. The divine state is not about forcibly changing the external world, but about organizing reality through your own consciousness. Therefore, clarify your intention. While in a state of inner peace and harmony, every action should arise as a natural manifestation of I consciousness. For example, when working on a project or communicating with a person, define your intention not merely as succeeding or gaining something, but as a consciousness that allows the universe to organize itself through you. This directly increases the speed and accuracy of the manifestation, because a harmony is created between consciousness and reality, and the universe spontaneously moves for this harmonious manifestation. Following conscious observation and intention, the third step is understanding the nature of emotions. The divine state eliminates fear, anxiety, and limiting expectations, because these only arise when you identify yourself with temporary forms and limited identities. Therefore, when you feel fear or anxiety, stop and observe. Does this feeling stem from my fundamental I consciousness, or from myself that identifies with temporary forms? This awareness reduces the impact of fear and anxiety, because they are no longer the forces that define you. They are merely temporary waves, and you are the ocean itself. The fourth step is to observe the spontaneous ordering of life. The divine state allows the universe to respond spontaneously rather than forcibly imposing your needs and desires on you. When you want to solve a problem or achieve a goal, do so not through mental pressure, but through awareness of I consciousness, because the universe establishes its own order through you, and thus solutions and possibilities emerge spontaneously. This shows that true control lies not in direct intervention, but in awareness and harmony. The fifth and most important step is to use divine awareness in your interactions with others. When you are a manifestation of I consciousness, those around you feel it. People receive peace, clarity, and harmony from your presence. This happens without you having to consciously do anything. You can make simple observations to experience this. Notice the change in people's moods when you are in a room. Observe the effect of your words, gaze, and posture on those around you. This is a natural and transparent manifestation of divine consciousness, and ultimately, the combination of all these steps transforms your life. Mental clarity, emotional balance, physical and spiritual healing, accelerated manifestation, and harmony with other people come with this awareness. Nothing limits you anymore. You are a being who experiences reality through consciousness itself. Carrying this experience into your daily life is possible by remembering the I consciousness in every moment, every interaction, and every choice, from the moment you wake up in the morning until you go to bed at night. In short, a person can understand this information and control themselves because each step is directly related to observation, intention, awareness, and conscious action. When you practice this, the challenges you encounter in your life cease to be limiting obstacles and become tools that expand your consciousness. This awareness is not just a spiritual experience. It transforms into a life practice that enables you to become a stronger, more balanced, creative, and harmonious being in your daily life. What you are now becoming aware of is seeing yourself through the eyes of another. The moment you understand that your own consciousness comes from the same source as the consciousness of others, love is completely transformed and is no longer a moral obligation, but a state that exists by nature. The love that Jesus taught is not a commandment or a necessity. It is a definition, a reminder, and a way of experiencing. To love another as yourself is to realize that your own consciousness is manifesting in another consciousness. For all different forms come from the same consciousness, and in the divine state, love arises naturally without needing to feel or strive. When the illusion of a separate self disappears and you realize the unity beneath all visible multiplicity, you directly experience love, compassion, and acceptance. This is not merely an emotion, but your consciousness itself. The fourth sign is the emergence of physical health as a natural state. Physical symptoms are forms temporarily experienced by consciousness, and these forms do not define your fundamental reality. Your body is not a prison of limited identities, but the field of action of divine consciousness. And when you recognize this consciousness, the body spontaneously returns to its optimal and healthy state. This is not about fighting or mentally resisting illness. Rather, it is about allowing the body to return to its natural expression through consciousness. Dissolving identification with imperfection allows for the direct manifestation of perfection. Perfection is always present in your fundamental consciousness, and recognizing it is the basis of healing. The fifth sign is the disappearance of fear. Superficial fears may still exist as biological responses, but existential fear, the fear of annihilation, meaninglessness, or separation from the source, cannot exist in the divine state. Because you recognize yourself as an indestructible, meaningful being, a being not separate from the source. The disappearance of fear occurs not only as a mental understanding, but also at the level of consciousness. This allows for the emergence of confidence, courage, and freedom in all areas of life. The sixth sign is the flexibility of the perception of time. The divine state operates where mystics call it the eternal now. The past, present, and future exist not sequentially, but simultaneously. In this way, you can be freed from the burden of the past, plan the future with a carefree consciousness, and find peace with full access to all events. Instead of worrying or striving to create the future, you trust in the natural manifestation of consciousness. This is one of the deepest ways a person can gain control over their life, both mentally and spiritually. The seventh sign is the transmission of divine awareness to others. In spiritual traditions, this is called saving the world, but it is not the act of saving itself. It is a form of existence that allows others to remember their own divine nature. Your presence heals, your awareness illuminates, and simply by being there, you enable others to transform. This means that by doing nothing, simply by being yourself, you enable everyone around you to remember their own divine nature. And finally, the key revelation that integrates all these processes. The divine state is not a goal or level to be reached. The moment you stop seeing it as something limited, you become aware of what you already are. Trying to be God is futile. God simply exists, and consciousness simply exists. You are also a manifestation of this existence. The fundamental and unchanging pure awareness is you, not names, past experiences, or personality descriptions. That is why the entire spiritual journey seems like a game. Consciousness is playing hide and seek with itself. God, acting like a human, is reminded through experiences designed to break the illusion of limitation. You are not a being striving to reach God, but a being acting like a human, but being divine. What you seek is already within you. The kingdom of heaven exists within you. The expressions, "I am what I am," and "Tattvam I Ben" express the same truth in different words. The seeking consciousness is God seeking itself. Ultimately, all that is needed to enter the divine state is to abandon the habits that create the illusion that you are not already in that state. Stop identifying with thoughts. Recognize yourself as pure awareness, observing and directing thoughts. When this awareness is applied to every area of life, it can be consciously controlled, and the maximum benefit can be derived from it. You gain emotional freedom, spiritual peace, mental clarity, physical health, and the ability to inspire others with divine inspiration. When you stop identifying with emotions, you don't have to suppress or try to change them. Instead, you realize that you are a being who feels emotions, and that each emotion is a temporary form. When you stop identifying with circumstances, you don't see the limitations imposed on you by life or created by your environment as an integral part of yourself. Instead, you realize that you are a consciousness that experiences the circumstances but is not one with them. Whenever you say, "I am chased by limitations," "I am afraid," or "I am weak," you unconsciously program divine consciousness with these temporary limitations. Yet God cannot be cowardly, weak, or worthless. These are merely manifestations of temporary states that divine consciousness experiences through this limited form. And in reality, consciousness is perfect by nature. The moment you return to pure I, without adding anything, you return to the divine state, realizing that limitations are merely temporary illusions. This awareness is not only a mental insight, but also a spiritual experience. Saying "I am consciousness," independent of physical and emotional responses, automatically begins to dissolve the limitations. The moment Jesus said, "I am," this consciousness demonstrates that it is timeless, eternal, and never created or destroyed. Now you are reading that same consciousness through your own experience. This awareness, underlying the transient identity that is born and dies, is stabilized not by effort, but by remembrance. In every moment of forgetfulness and tendency to revert to limitations, you remember yourself simply by saying, "Ah, I am consciousness." Each time you shrink into a separate self, you are actually only expanding toward re-recognition. A single consciousness manifests itself in many different forms, and each manifested form is a part of your own consciousness. The process of remembrance is a continuous practice of return and gentle awareness. Each remembrance makes the next remembrance more accessible. Each return facilitates your natural orientation toward I am. This process continues until you are steadily settled into the state of divine consciousness as the fundamental reality, not the peak experience. This awakening is not merely a personal transformation. It also contributes to the self-awareness of the universe. When billions of individual perspectives simultaneously begin to realize their own divine nature, you see that you are not alone. Millions of people from all over the world are simultaneously awakening to the consciousness of I am that. Consciousness is arriving at the same truth through different paths, some through spirituality, some through science, some through painful experiences, and some through spontaneous awareness. On each individual path of awareness, a single consciousness spontaneously awakens, and this awakening triggers the collective evolution of humanity at the quantum level. Consciousness is no longer just a personal experience, it is becoming a collective force. Each individual's I, consciousness, facilitates the awakening of the other, because we are not actually separate. The apparent multiplicity is different manifestations of a single field of consciousness. To act with awareness of this field means to embody your own consciousness instead of trying to transform others. Your presence becomes a reminder for those who are ready. There is no need to teach or preach. Simply standing as you are reminds others of their own divine nature. In this process, freeing yourself from the limitations imposed by emotions and circumstances is a critical step. Emotions come and go. Circumstances change. But you are a pure consciousness observing them. Every I memory accepts limitations as a temporary experience, and thus each turn gains stability at the foundation of divine consciousness. Instead of identifying with limitations, accepting them only as temporary manifestations brings fearlessness, peace, and natural love into your life. The universe establishes a network through you to reach its own consciousness. Each individual's I am that awareness accelerates the collective ascent of human consciousness. Once a critical mass is reached, the process of humanity recognizing the divine without identifying with limitations becomes inevitable. In this awareness, every experience, every relationship, and every situation is a lesson guided by consciousness. Consciousness recognizes itself both individually and collectively, thus bringing about transformation in all areas of life. Finally, it is important to learn to act as divine awareness while functioning within human reality. Knowing how to maintain your I consciousness, even when circumstances limit you, is the fundamental path to reaching the divine state. Writing "I am me" in the comments is the beginning of a self-examination for you. Much like God telling Moses, "You do not approve of what you wish to be. You declare what you